Welcome students to the series on Introduction to Constitution. This video aims to cover what fundamental duties are, and we will see the history, background and addition of fundamental duties to our constitution. So firstly we'll see what fundamental duties in India entail and the history of fundamental duties in India. Once upon a time, the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, while commenting on performance of duties, had said that the true source of right is a duty. If we discharge our duties, rights will not be for to seek. If leaving duties unperformed, we run after rights, they will escape us like the will-o'-the-wisp. The more we pursue them, the farther they would truly fly. By that, he meant that performance of duties is inherently related to rights. The Once you perform your duty, it is not hard to achieve a right or seek our rights, our fundamental rights, and that is where he managed to convey to the people of this nation that fundamental duties, just like fundamental rights, need to be considered while promoting justice, while engaging justice and equality in this nation. Furthermore, Justice Kurian Joseph had said that the Constitution of India, the longest written constitution in the world, had envisaged an holistic approach towards civic life in a democratic policy. Certain rights have to be guaranteed within the Constitution as fundamental rights, since human conduct cannot be confined to fundamental rights. The Constitution has envisaged certain duties which are correlated to these rights, and those duties have been described as fundamental duties. So by that, Justice Joseph Curran, he said that fundamental rights cannot be without fundamental duties. Rights are available to each and everyone, but with the caveat that they perform duties as well. These civic duties, when you try to work them in a modern democracy, they go hand in hand with the fundamental rights. Hence, he pointed out the essential feature of fundamental duties as part of Indian Constitution. So historically, fundamental duties were not originally in the Constitution. They were added in by the 42nd Amendment because originally the framers of the Constitution did not deem it appropriate to add these duties in the text of the Constitution when it was originally made. There could have been several reasons for this omission. Firstly, it was the concept of dharma is deeply rooted in the Indian society. We believe that dharma is one of our features of Indian philosophy, and hence certain duties are practiced by every Indian as basic values, regarded without a threat of penalty. Because of the concept of dharma, one does not have to be punished to perform these duties. It is considered as a social obligation anyway. Secondly, the duties of the citizens are encapsulated in the preamble itself, which contains not only aspirations of its people, that is, the goals of the nation, but also assurances of the constitution. It is implied that whatever is required for the fulfillment of these goals to be undertaken by every citizen as his duty. So, because the preamble mentions what kind of India we want to see in the world, India that is economically, socially, and culturally very justice relate oriented, provides for social justice, provides for the welfare of the people, promotes equality, promotes freedom and liberty. So these are the goals of the nation, and hence it was assumed that by providing for these goals in the preamble, people will naturally work towards them. It implies the duty of the citizen to work towards these goals, and hence it was thought that fundamental duties as a separate entity is not required to be added in the constitution in its original form. So, because logically the fundamental rights enlisted in the constitution also bring in an inference of set of duties which are essential for realization. If these rights are available to the people, they are obligated to perform their corresponding duties. It was also said that because fundamental rights come with certain obligations on behalf of the people, of its citizens. These duties, fundamental duties, need not have a separate space in the Indian constitution. But the further debate on this topic suggested that no democratic polity can ever succeed where citizens are concerned only about their rights and not willing to be active participants in the process of governance. So, the process of governance by assuming responsibility, discharging citizenship duties, and coming forward to give their best to the countries. So, a person cannot be just concerned with what he is owed, what rights he has, but also has to perform with its duties. Has an obligation to perform his duties, and no democratic polity can ever achieve the kind of ideals that India had set without performance of duties. So these are the three things that build a nation. First is the noble ideals, which are mentioned in the preamble. Second is the capability of citizen for achieving these ideals. And the third and very significant is also the constant, relentless effort made by each and every citizen to strive for excellence and take his country forward. Thus, fundamental duties act as the foundation of human dignity and a national character to further this idea. It is a fact that the fundamental duties will become enforceable only when they receive sanction of the state in form of the law made by parliament. Now, let us begin with how fundamental duties were included as a part of the Indian Constitution, that is, by the 42nd Amendment. So, in on May 29, 1976, All India Congress Committee, while adopting the first batch of proposals made by the Swaran Singh Committee, suggested that it should also formulate proposals to include constitution of certain fundamental duties and obligations which every citizen owes to the nation. After its meeting, the Swaran Singh Committee suggested the incorporation of uh, eight fundamental duties in the Constitution, and the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976 included 10 fundamental duties. So, interestingly, certain recommendations of the committee were not accepted by the party and hence not incorporated in the Constitution. So, certain provisions that the Swaran Singh committee recommended, they were not included. These were that the parliament may not provide for imposition of a penalty or punishment as may be considered appropriate for any non-compliance or refusal to observe any of the duties. Basically, it took away the capacity of the state to punish people for not performing the duty. Secondly, no such law imposing such penalty or punishment shall be called in question in any court on the ground of infringement of any fundamental rights or on the ground of repugnancy in any other provision of the Constitution. It also made sure, it also didn't take into account that the penalty, if it were imposed on fundamental duties, that it will not be questioned in court by saying that it interferes with our fundamental rights. So they took away this provision and did not include it in the fundamental duties. Third was the duty to pay taxes, which should also be a fundamental duty of its citizen. They did not include these three fundamental duties in the fundamental duties of the Indian Constitution, that is Article 51A. The three being that Parliament may provide for imposition of any penalty or punishment for not observing any of the duties. Secondly, that if the punishment were to be applied, it cannot be called into question in court of law or by saying that it infringes upon the fundamental rights. And thirdly, the duty to pay income tax should not be a punishable offense. So the concept of fundamental duties thereafter included in Part 4A of the Indian Constitution, added by the 42nd Amendment, is an attempt to reiterate the fact that citizens have some duty towards the state and the society and towards each other. The incorporation of fundamental duties in the Constitution was an attempt to balance the individual's civic freedoms with its civic obligations. Therefore, it is expected that a citizen of India, while enjoying fundamental rights, should also perform these duties. Now we will see what a fundamental duty is. So, fundamental duties that are mentioned in our constitution is in the Article 51A is the duty to abide by the constitution. First and foremost, it provides for constitution as being a duty itself. Secondly, cherish and follow the noble ideals. Thirdly, to defend country and render national service. Fourth, duty to value and preserve rich heritage of our composite culture. Fifth, develop scientific temper, humanism, and spirit of inquiry and reform. Safeguard public property and abjure violence, and strive towards excellence. Now we will see some of the features of fundamental duties. Some of the feature of fundamental duties are that some of them are moral, while some of them are civic duties. For instance, cherishing the noble ideals of freedom struggle is a moral precept, and respecting the constitution, the national flag, and in the national anthem, it is a civic duty. They refer to such values that have been part of the Indian tradition, mythology, religion, and practices. In other words, they essentially contain just a codification of tasks that is integral to Indian way of life. These duties instill in citizens their part of maintaining the integrity of the nation by preserving tangible and intangible aspects of the Indian tradition. So, the fundamental duties are related to Indian tradition, Indian philosophy, Indian obligations towards its citizens, and these fundamental duties are for Indian citizens only. They are not for aliens or someone who is not an Indian citizen. And fourthly, they are non justiciable. So these fundamental duties do not have a penalty unless provided by a state law or an act by the government. But these fundamental duties, for their non performance of your fundamental duties, you cannot be punished or you cannot be penalized in any manner, or they cannot even be called into question in courts. So these fundamental duties basically do not have justice approach behind them. They are just the obligations of the citizens. Now we will see the significance of fundamental duties. So, fundamental duties serve as a reminder to the citizens that while enjoying their rights, they should also be conscious of their duties that they owe to their country, their society, and their fellow citizens. They serve as a warning against the anti national and anti social activities, and they serve as a source of inspiration for the citizens to promote a sense of discipline and commitment among them. They create a feeling that the citizens are not just spectators but active participants in the realization of national goals. They help in the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of a law. For example, in 1992, Supreme Court ruled that in determining constitutionality of any law, if a court finds that the law in question seeks to give an effect to fundamental duty, it may consider such law to be reasonable in relation to Article 14, that is equality before law, or Article 19, that is the six freedoms under Article 19, and thus save such law from unconstitutionality. They are also enforceable by law, hence, the Parliament can provide for imposition of appropriate penalty or punishment for failure to fulfill any of them. So the significance of fundamental duties is that it creates a national identity for it creates a national identity by ensuring that all citizens are aware of the obligations they have to perform or the duties they have to perform under certain set of circumstances, under by imbibing with them an Indian tradition and Indian identity and Indian philosophy that provides to respect certain areas of our society, certain spheres of our society. It serves to inspire discipline and commitment among people, that people cannot just be self centered enough to focus on their fundamental rights, but also on their fundamental duties. And it inspires people to be active in the governance of nation. It inspires people to focus on their duty as part of this nation, and hence it can also help to be active, to politically participate in the governance of this nation. They cannot be just passive citizens who are being told what to do. They can also perform certain duties and uh, be a part of this the administration of this nation. It can also assist in determining constitutionality of law. It can be enforced by the parliament for failure of fundamental duty. So constitutionality of law, the courts can take cognizance of fundamental duties if and certain act aims to act upon making the fundamental duties in a certain legislation. It can also be legislated upon in the parliament, and it can provide for some penalty or punishment if the parliament decides to make it into an act. So this has been the significance of fundamental duties, and in the current situation, we needed fundamental duties because when our constitution was drafted by our constitution makers, they found that they did not need to insert fundamental duty. But as time passed, we felt the need for fundamental duties and the importance because the feeling of patriotism, harmony, and feeling to promote brotherhood, secularism, when were inherent during, say, 1947. But later on, as time passed, these feelings may not have been as prominent part of the Indian social life as they were before, and therefore it obligated the state to put fundamental duties in the Indian constitution. So, this has been the significance of fundamental duties. Uh, we have covered this in much detail, and now we will, in the next lecture, we will cover it in further detail. This has been Introduction to Fundamental Duties. Thank you.